rates in March of 2025 have gone up. They are in the sixes. And we were told in 21 and 22, when the rates were twos, that when the rates went up, everything would come to a screeching halt. Well, let's talk about why that didn't happen. So I'm Casey Jenkins with Oak Realty, and let's talk about rates and demand and how they influence each other. So if you take it back to 21 and 22, when the rates were 2s, 3s, and 4%, you had a huge demand of buyers coming out. It was a conglomerate of a lot of different things coming together, but the biggest one was because rates were so low, sellers could move up from their small house into a ginormous house and still afford the same payment, or even lower their payment in some cases. And so all these people saw this opportunity to be able to move up really easy and really fast and have this really, really low rate, that they took advantage of it. The other thing is you had a lot of millennials that were in the mid to end of the millennial generation that were looking at houses and going, oh, I'm in my 30s, I really want a house, I want to settle down. And so they were coming into the market. You had a lot of boomers who have decided not to, move on or downsize. They've decided to age in place. So they were holding on to houses in the market. And so you had this whole influx in 21 and 22 that sort of like almost gridlocked the market with these fantastic rates. And in doing that sent, prices skyrocketing. Well, everybody back then was like, hey, when rates hit 6, everything will cool off. Well, here we are in 2025 with rates in the 6s, and I'm still seeing multiple offers. It cooled off a little bit for the past 2 years. We didn't see as many multiple offers. It wasn't insane like the number of years in 21 and 22, but it has not stopped. And what has caused that in the multiple offer situation and in the selling side is now what's happening is you have less houses on the market, but we have less demand, but the ratio of houses to demand is still much the same. And so even though we're selling less houses, because all these people moved up in 21 and 22, they're not moving. They don't need to move. They bought the bigger house, they now fit in that bigger house, and they're perfectly happy staying in that bigger house because it will last them for a while. And they have a 2.5% rate, so they really don't see why they should move, which I get it. I understand that. So you have this huge influx of the end of the millennials, plus the Gen Z generation coming in their 20s and going, we saw what the millennials did, we want to just buy a house in the beginning. So now you have all these guys trying to buy the houses that we have very little houses of. And all of these guys had no clue that rates were 2s, 3s, and 4s. And so they're not waiting for rates to come down. They're taking advantage of the fact that they can purchase a house now. And so that's where you're seeing this still gridlock, and you're still seeing multiple offers, and we're still deep in a seller's market, and we still see a lot of the same, just not to the volume that we saw in 21 and 22, because the ratio is just slightly smaller. Less houses, less buyers, same ratio. And so a lot of people that were like, oh, the rates will help cool this market off, it really didn't. What it did was it kept people in houses, and so it just squished the amount of houses. Because last year in the United States as a whole, we sold so few houses that it took us all the way back, like the equivalent to that sale was in 1995, was the last time we sold that little of homes. And so it dropped off tremendously because of what happened, but the influx. And you've still got the boomers that are aging in place, so they're not moving. And now you've got all these people that have rate locked into 2 and 3%, and they're not moving. The people that you actually see moving are the people that have to move. They don't have a choice. They need to. They can't do stairs anymore. They're empty nesting and they can't take care of this whole entire big house. There's lots of reasons people do move, but it's just not because, oh, I can get a better house with the smaller rate and I can pay the same amount. So on a whim, let's just move. There's no longer any of that. And so you're going to continue to see this gridlock of, not enough houses for the buyers out there until we get to the point where the sellers start actually moving and the sellers start deciding to sell and the seller side of things gets bigger. Once the seller side of things gets bigger, that ratio will come back into, hey, we have more sellers than buyers. And so the rates will influence it a little more as the sellers get more. If the sellers continue to go down and we continue to have less sellers, we're still going to see multiple offers. We're still going to see over asking price. We're still going to see all of that, even though the ratio, the amount of people out there might be 100 sellers to, 150 buyers versus 10,000 sellers to, 15,000 buyers. So that's why you haven't seen a slowdown or haven't seen the prices drop. And it's going to continue that way until people start moving for more than just, hey, I have to move. So if you want to talk about it more, give me a call, shoot me a text. This is something I love to talk about because it very much affects me, and it very much is interesting to see how everything plays together, and it's not just one thing that causes whether we're in a seller's market or a buyer's market. So don't forget to like and subscribe.